Hello and a very warm welcome back to the Gimme Wrestling Podcast. My name is Tom and you are?
I'm Ant.
Hello!
And today we're looking at the most underrated wrestlers from 1985 to 1990 in the WWF. This is covering the pay-per-views that we've watched, not Saturday Night Main Event or any of that. Just the pay-per-views that are available from the network. We've also done a top 10 greatest list of the greatest wrestlers from 1985 to 1990. If you haven't seen that already, go check it out on our channel. So, shall we get this list underway, Dom?
Yeah, man, we shall get this list underway. Number 10 is one of your favourite picks on this list, rocking Ronnie Garvin. Can you tell me about your opinions on Ronnie? I like him. I like some of his work. I do understand why he is your pick, one of your top picks on this list for being, well, underrated.
It was underrated. There was a great feud that he had with Greg Valentine in around the 89 period where he really did some great storytelling throughout the pay-per-views and in the ring as well. One of his matches, I believe it is at the Royal Rumble 89 or 90 perhaps, is outstanding. It's better than the Rumble itself, and he pulls that out of Greg Valentine, who was an okay wrestler but didn't really do anything else spectacular. No. I didn't even consider him for this list.
He did a good promo as well, didn't he? When he
did a very good promo. It was one of the SummerSlams.
Was it because he lost a match?
He lost a match and had to retire.
And then he got brought back, and that was really good.
He was brought back as a ring announcer, so he was ring announcing for Greg Valentine. Basically, whoever Greg Valentine was facing, he'd announce him normally, and then he'd just insult Greg Valentine as he come down the ring, and that was really funny, man.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
It was good, and that's why I've put Ronnie Garvin. Also, the match that he had with Greg Valentine at that Royal Rumble pay-per-view was an outstanding match, like a really good, hard-hitting match from two brawlers, really. Yeah,
I mean, like I say, it would have been interesting to see what he could have done with more time.
With storytelling like that.
Yeah, more storytelling, It was quite entertaining.
Great. Yeah. So number 9 on the list is our only female entry on the list, and it's going to the Jumping Bomb Angels. They had 2 matches at the pay-per-views that we watched. One of them was outstanding, like easily the best female match that we've seen. Against Lilian Kai and Wendy Richter, I believe, as a tag team. And they were outstanding, man.
At a time when the women's wrestling was very much, you could win with a crossbody or a roll up, or even just a slap to the face, and that was a 1-2-3 win. You know, these guys were doing moves that you wouldn't see out of place nowadays. Right. And they were pushing the envelope a little bit and taking risks and just really leaving it all out there. And that's what we want to see as wrestling fans these days. And that's what most people perhaps they didn't know they wanted it then, but it was brilliant. It was brilliant to see.
I think they had a great showing in the Survivor Series match where we didn't know them at all, and we was like, wow, who were these two? That compared to the other women that you had in that match, that was really good. Really underrated, I think, and it's a shame that we didn't see more. I did check out some of the work that they did in Japan, and especially some of the early work that they did with Medusa, who later would become Alundra Blaze in the WWE.
Alundra Blaze was first, and then Medusa was... Medusa
was first.
Medusa was first, you're right, Medusa was first.
And then she went back to Medusa.
And then she went back into WCW.
And now she uses Medusa she's a monster truck driver, so she uses Medusa as a name.
Which is on the WWE Network, if you fancy checking that out.
There we go. So great. I think they brought a lot of Japan's wrestling style into the WWF for the women's division. It's a shame that there was nobody else to really take that on at the time, and that's what a lot of wrestling at this time lacked, was a few good players. I mean, later on we get Alundra Blaze, who was spectacular, but there was nobody really for her to fight, and that was a lot of the problem with the women's division at this time.
Yeah.
So number 8 on our underrated wrestlers list is Marty Jannetty from the Rockers.
Yeah, it's weird we haven't put him in. It's weird because we've put other people in this list that then became they were a tag team in this era. and then they became greater as single performers.
Yeah.
But Jannetty arguably never achieved greater attention than this point in his life.
That's
which is really unfortunate because he was one of the greatest wrestlers technically during this period, and in my opinion the better of the pair
at this time.
In a tag team context,
yeah.
He was a better tag team wrestler.
Yes, I agree. I think the Rockers were massive in terms of getting over more of a tag team style as opposed to it being two individuals. They really used a lot of double team moves, and it wasn't just a finisher.
Yeah, paving the way for like the Hardy Boys and stuff like that. Very similar kind of, in this time again. Same with the Jumping Bomb Angels, putting a style across that just wasn't really, hadn't been practiced before. It wasn't something, especially in entertainment or wrestling entertainment.
Not in WWF.
Not in WWF. No. So it was. So Jannetty is,
and we put Jannetty on the list solo because he didn't get the recognition later on that Michaels did.
I mean, I think as well at this time you could see people were really starting to get behind Michaels.
There was,
and Michaels' style more. Like I say, there are later people in this list that did really well on a singles thing, and a couple that you could argue maybe are in the same boat as Jannetty, but really for us, like I say, Jannetty never achieved that same level of success, and I wish he had. He came back in the Attitude Era and he reformed the Rockers with Al Snow, or as he was then, Leif Cassidy. And it wasn't the same.
No.
And he came back and had a couple of singles matches as well, and it was nice to see during that time Jannetty come back. But of course, he could never repeat the same success. Whereas Shawn, we all know how well Shawn did. So Jannetty deserves this a spot. And
I think also the Rockers didn't get enough recognition in terms of they never won a title, and they're not even in the Hall of Fame at the minute. I mean, that's
Michaels in there yet?
Michaels,
is he in there yet?
He must be.
I don't even know.
He's certainly in with the clique, isn't he? So
it must be.
So that's why we've put Jannetty into the list. If you're enjoying the list, please give us a like or a subscribe.
And comment. Tell us what you do like. Tell us what you don't like.
If you disagree with us, that's wonderful. Let us know.
Yeah,
we come and check out our channel.
We encourage your arguments. We encourage your dislike.
So number 7 on the list it's another tag team because we both actually had them down as individuals in our separate lists, and it was the Twin Towers. You put Bossman in there.
Yeah.
I put Akeem in there as an underrated wrestler. Why did you put Bossman in there?
I think we kind of he comes in later on within our coverage, and we don't see the level of success that he comes to in later career. But during this time, he has a fairly large push, but never quite gets to the levels of say a Hogan. And even though he flirts with the main event in that way, I think certainly he's one of the standout performers. And perhaps I'm a little clouded by his later career. There's other people in this list that you can say had an incredible legendary run, like the Big Boss Man did eventually do. But during this period or the early period of their career, or just never won a world title, for example. And Bossman is one of those people that I would have liked to have seen had a world title run at any point in his career, especially at this time, the earliest points in his career when he was the most, fresh, I would have said. So Bossman's on my list because I think he was a great talent with a good gimmick that was quite relatable to a lot of people. In terms of he was, an all-American hero, but in a way that, wasn't over the top corny. I mean, he had a very corny gimmick when you think about it.
He did, and worked well with that.
But it wasn't Hacksaw Jim Duggan corny, and it wasn't Sergeant Slaughter over the top. It was good and it was solid, people got behind him because he was a blue collar, hardworking policeman, but you know what I mean. And later on, he became an enforcer.
An enforcer, yeah.
Which I believe
is a clever twist.
I think it's a stronger gimmick later on in his career. But I would have loved to. And he did become. He went on to become European champion. I think he was tag team champion for a while. This is all later on in his career too.
Yeah.
Like he didn't have any titles at this point.
But in this period, you think he was underused?
Yeah, I think he was underused. Yeah.
I mean, I'd say the same with, especially as the Twin Towers. I'd say that team was underused, and it felt like they were the biggest threat for Hogan Savage. And then as soon as they'd sort of moved on, the Twin Towers just disappeared very quickly. I would think the Twin Towers could have had better tag team success. Obviously, this was around the same time that Demolitions were holding the titles and stuff like that. But I think them two could have dominated, and with the similar looks and both very athletic wrestlers. The reason I put Akeem into the list was because his run as one-man gang, and we've sort of said this a few times on the channel, he looked boss, man. He was the boss man, you know. He looked amazing and obviously
gang time,
as we've sort of said before, in the first Royal Rumble that's recognised by the WWF, One Man Gang was great, like a force in the ring, like a new talent. Obviously, One Man Gang won the very first Royal Rumble. That was the unofficial very first Royal Rumble. I think he was killed partly by his gimmick. I don't think Akeem worked very well. No. I think it was a dig at Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah, and it was responsible. But then, of course, Dusty came on board.
Dusty came.
You know.
And so Akeem sort of left to the... So I don't think Akeem got the chance to shine as much as he could have done. So next on the list at number 6, we have Haku.
Yeah, and I think in my list I put Haku a little bit further up. I'm a huge fan of Haku, and when you look at the dynasty and the family that he came from and their success in the WWE, of course, the Samoans. So you got the Rocks and the Rikishis, etc. And Haku, while he became King of the Ring, and he had a very long career, and he did a lot of great work. He never. Again, I'm looking at these guys. A lot of these guys, I'm thinking you could have put a world title on them. You should have put a world title on them. And there's a couple of my favourites on my top of my list, and I'm like, the reason they're on here is because they never won a world title. And they should have done, in my opinion.
There's one or two that definitely should have done.
Haku,
you think
in
Haku
my opinion, I think
title?
He could have carried it. I think he could. Later on in his career, if they'd have given him the right chances, there has not been someone with that level of power and agility.
He was very skillful.
He's got the,
I mean, that super kick of his was
he's got
awesome.
You see how like Rusev is today?
Yeah.
That kind of, that agility and that. I think to be fair, Rusev has had a little bit more time to shine on the mic and a little bit more charisma, but just that same prowess and power and just wonderful ring style, technically outshining, I think, anybody on this list so far that we've mentioned. I think he's a fantastic.
I think there's an argument for Jannetty.
Jannetty, perhaps.
But I agree with you. I think he was an outstanding wrestler. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think it was probably the charisma side of it that didn't push him to that next level to become a Rude or something like that. So next up on the list we have Jake the Snake Roberts. Now, this isn't someone that I included on my list, but it was number 1 on your list, Dom, and we sort of talked about it and went really back and forth with it. Yeah,
he was number 1 on my list of...
underrated wrestlers.
Number 1 on my list, but also pretty high on my list of the best wrestlers.
It was, yeah.
I mean, I'm a little bit of a fanboy for Jake Roberts, but he, like I say, I don't think he held a title in the WWE.
No.
And when you think about, and while you can say, oh yeah, but it was all about his promos, he didn't need a title. No, he didn't need a title. Neither did Dusty Rhodes. But when you think about it, and you think about all the people that when the Warrior carried the title, and of course the Ultimate Warrior deserved it but he deserved it because of his physique and his look and how much merchandise he sold. But when you look at the overall skill in terms of ring promos, and also when he was given the chance to shine in a decent match with guys like Steamboat, for example,
which is
you
a brilliant
can see
match
his technical ability that perhaps didn't shine for other things. You know, your criticism is that he doesn't have a lot of great matches during this time.
I mean, my problem for Roberts is that he's sort of lumbered with matches against Andre in his later career, and it's all about, the reason they're giving Roberts is because Roberts can tell a story without needing Andre the Giant to work really hard in the ring. That's why Jake was in it. And I agree with you. I think a title run could have been interesting with him. I think the DDT was so over, and everyone was so excited when Jake did that symbol. It was a finisher that was one of the first big finishers.
It was great, and it's still my favourite finisher today.
You don't, when the Hogan match is going, you don't hear people chanting leg drop.
No, you don't.
But you hear people chanting DDT.
Yeah, you know, and it's just a shame, because I think the one thing that I think it was, you know, when you a lot of these guys, you can from a business standpoint, you know, you can see why Vince, on a business level, why Vince might not have put the belt on them. Mm-hmm. You know,
Roberts would have made sense from a fan point of view.
Roberts, of all these people on this list, with exception to a few that I can't mention yet, the rest of them, I think you have arguments that they could have put a world title on them, including Jake. I think it's that he's of this list, the top 5 are the ones that you could have put a title on. I agree. But I agree with myself.
Yeah, of course you do.
But yeah, like you know, when you look at, say, The Undertaker, and he has the similar kind of psychological thing and a similar dark demeanor, but they put the belt on him. And I question whether it was a look thing, whether Jake didn't have the right look, whether people didn't want, you know, kids playing with snakes or something.
I think in our sort of coverage with Jake, we've talked before about his match with Honky Tonk Man at WrestleMania, and if you go back and watch our Wrestling Rewind series, that's where we cover all the pay-per-views that have led up to this point. That's on our channel on Gimme a Whole Year. The thing with that match was, obviously in the build-up to that, he'd shattered, was it a couple of his vertebrae up on his neck? Yeah. After Honky Tonk Man had hit him in the neck with the guitar. So I think he was suffering as a wrestler as well.
Yeah, he was in pain.
And that was bringing in pain, killer addiction, and that led on to other things. Yeah. So Roberts was amazing, and I agree with you. I think that's why we've sort of found a level for him here. I think he was in the main event sort of scene, just not necessarily the title scene. Yeah. He was still working with main event guys, which is why he's on the list. Dom taught me around to it that he could have potentially had a title run and never got that opportunity in this time.
Absolutely.
So number 4 on the list is Tito Santana. Now, we talked a little bit about Strikeforce. Strikeforce was something. It was a team I was never that fond of.
No, but both those guys, obviously,
Martel as well.
Martel didn't make the list for us because his moral gimmick came in too late, really, in our opinion.
And he didn't do out for me before Strikeforce.
Yeah, Strikeforce wasn't good. I mean, I think you could have put a world title on Tito Santana at this point if you'd have based it on looks, and you'd have based it on the way he was in the ring and the way he executed matches. He had good matches with people, solid matches with people.
He was the ultimate jobber. Yeah, he was a bit like you've compared him in the past before to Dolph Ziggler.
Yeah, but like, and I would still put a world title on Dolph Ziggler because on a workhorse level, the guy was exceptional.
Absolutely. There's a couple of people on this list that I'd argue were in the same sort of league, but he worked hard even when he wasn't given a win necessarily, or he'd always make the other guy look good. He was fast in the ring. He never slowed down, and he seemed like a consummate professional. From the matches that we covered at WrestleMania 1, I don't think he won any WrestleManias after that. No. A bit like Jeff Hardy's losing streak, because he only beat that this year. But he was always that guy that you could go to and put on a good match. And so it's sad to see that he didn't get a second Intercontinental title run. I know he had an Intercontinental title run in 82, I believe, or 83. Would have liked to have seen Tito a little bit further. I think his gimmick probably let him down a bit. He didn't really have a gimmick. Yeah. It's sort of a bit later on he became more Mexican, and the whole Spanish thing was more affluent. But at this point, he was a consummate jobber, but he was excellent. And I think that if the company had put a little bit of time behind his character work, could have took him to the next level.
Yeah, I agree.
So next on the list is Dynamite Kid and the British Bulldog.
Yeah, now Dynamite Kid for me is in the same boat as Jannetty, and we put the Bulldog on here because
if we're to talk about the Bulldogs,
I put obviously both British Bulldogs are on this. Is I put Dynamite Kid on, but I didn't put the Bulldog on.
Yeah,
because maybe I did. But Dynamite Kid has more acclaim, just like Jannetty, for being on this list, because the Dynamite Kid, even though he was injured and cut his career short, I think he was shortchanged, just like Jannetty was, except I don't think it was storyline. I think the British Bulldog actually, he kind of took that gimmick from in behind the scenes. He was he took the gimmick from Dynamite Kid. He wasn't allowed to use the gimmick in his later career, and the Bulldog went on to great success. Dynamite Kid did not.
Which is a shame, because in many of the events we've watched, Dynamite Kid was the strong performer.
Yeah, in that same story as Jannetty and The Rock.
Jannetty and Shawn in that period.
In this context, Dynamite Kid is the better of the pair. Great performer, wonderful temperament in the ring, great chemistry with others, and I think he's deserving of such a high spot on this list. Bulldog, like I say, went on to great success later. But again, if we're looking at this in terms of overall context, why he never got a title, he never got a world title. He got a hardcore title later on in his career, and a bunch of European title reigns, Intercontinental title reigns, of course, which would have been his greatest accomplishment. But nothing like the success that he should have had. I mean, we're British, of course, we're British, maybe slightly biased, but when you look at the success of. But then even like guys like William Regal these days don't necessarily have the success you'd think they might. But then when you look at Finn Balor and his success, perhaps it's changed. I think it's changed.
I think it is changing.
I think WWE's approach to wrestlers from different countries is becoming more.
It's more about ability now than about
they're becoming more. Whereas before it was like, this time it was very solidly building America and America's talent. But like Dynamite Kid, one of the greatest, like Owen Hart, one of the greatest. What could have happened?
Absolutely. I think his diving headbutt is scary to watch.
Well, it's scary to watch, and you understand why he became very unwell in later life.
But when these two put on a match, they had so much power, and it was such a shame that the sort of filtered them out towards the latter end of the 80s, because when they were in the ring, they really looked solid and really looked grounded, and so that's why they're on the list. So next on the list is Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Now, he was my number one. I think his match at WrestleMania 3 doesn't even need to be talked about with Macho is incredible. But I also think what he did with other wrestlers was incredible. I think his match with Jake the Snake was incredible. His match with...
he brings out the best in everybody.
He does. In anyone that he fights.
He was on my list not because of his... I was never a big fan of his mic work. I was never a big fan of his personality. But his ring work rivals and perhaps trumps everybody else on this list.
Agreed.
I
think
and that's why he's on here.
He should have had a better run. He should have had more time invested into his character. I think. I think his character work was there, but it was quite subtle.
Do you think that perhaps he didn't get because he was very similar to Savage in terms of his? Not the gimmick, but in terms of the moves and the style.
No, I think all I think it is with Steamboat is I think he had a child at the wrong time, and he wanted to spend some time with his child instead of wrestling, and because of that, Vince went, right, taking the title off you, and back you're back to the bottom of the line again, and that's such a shame because he had so much potential.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll do a couple of honourable mentions. So a couple of honourable mentions go to the Red Rooster, who was an excellent ring worker.
Excellent ring worker who's just saddled with the wrong gimmick.
Yeah, Mr. Perfect, who we didn't put on the list because actually he did have an amazing undefeated streak at this time.
Yeah.
However, I don't think he necessarily reached his potential, and maybe that'll be something that we'll cover in the sort of 90s.
Never really.
No. Next up, Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson. Again, two massive territory wrestlers that came in and didn't. They was great as the Brainbusters, and they had a sort of short tag team title, and they were very talented in the ring, even when they was in a Rumble and stuff like that. Just never wasn't there long enough, I suppose, especially Tully Blanchard. And then Paul Orndorff, maybe.
Yeah,
I mean,
solid worker.
The 85 to 86 is sort of Paul Orndorff's time, and he's sort of filtering off then anyway with a couple of main events with Hogan. But so they're our other wrestlers for honourable mentions on the underrated wrestler categories. Please let us know what you think, and if you've enjoyed the video so far, give us a thumbs up, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel, and go check out our greatest wrestlers of all time list. So now, for number 1, it's Ted DiBiase. Ted DiBiase was an outstanding wrestler, both in ring and in promos. From the second he comes into the WWF, he raises the bar, and whenever he's in a match with someone, the other person looks incredible.
Yeah. And if he was given a title run, he could have done it better than everybody else that's come in with the money gimmick and done, like Alberto Del Rio. You know, good performer, not a candle on DiBiase in terms in ring or on a promo. JBL.
Not
JBL. JBL had that. He was ripping. He was ripping Ted DiBiase badly, and he couldn't. You know, he was good. He was good, but he wasn't DiBiase good. Like DiBiase did it before anybody. Like he was the first guy to do that money gimmick, and become a complete ass where nobody liked, because he was just so all about the money, but he was so good at it. He was so great. Good at it, and he carried it, because people come along and they do the rich thing, and everyone's supposed to hate them and stuff, and people do hate them, but just because they're annoying. DiBiase, he made people hate him.
He was clever with it.
And he made people remember him. JBL was good, but in terms of a promo, he was annoying. He didn't really have the ring chemistry. Alberto Del Rio had the ring chemistry, but no promo skills. DiBiase had everything.
He was great. With
a world title run, I believe he could have still, if he had a world title run, just like he is one of the best and greatest anyway, he would have been, I think, one of the great, considered alongside a Ric Flair as an incredible champion.
Yeah. I think the closest he ever came to it was in the match against Macho. Macho won it. I'm pleased that Macho won it at that point, and that's when they give Ted DiBiase the $1 million belt instead.
Yeah,
it would have been great to have seen a Ted DiBiase run.
Absolutely, I think so.
But we're going to leave it there. Thank you ever so much for joining us. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter. And
give me a whole yeah.
Give me a whole yeah.
All right, keep it gay.